All right, in this next tutorial, I'm going to introduce you to the Appearances panel, and we're going to use it to create some very cool looking text that looks like this. Let's go check it out. Here we go. All right, so here we are in Illustrator. First, I want to show you what the Appearances panel is all about, and then we'll talk about how to use it for text. Keep in mind that this tutorial is the very, very tip of the iceberg as to what you can do with appearances. Appearances are incredible. They give you so much power to do some really fun things. So let's go check it out. I'm going to start off just by drawing a shape on the screen. It doesn't really matter what. This is really just for demonstration purposes. So I'm just going to take the ellipse tool and draw a circle. I'm holding shift down to maintain its ratio of 1 to 1, so it is a circle. All right, so there's my circle. The next thing I want to do is open up my Appearances panel. Now if you can't find it, it's under Window and Appearance. And there it is. It looks like the little icon for it looks like a little sun. All right, and you'll notice that in the Appearances panel, you have a fill and a stroke. So this is essentially just giving you the same control that you have by clicking over here or clicking over here to make your changes. So I can click on the fill and change the fill to any other color that I can think of. And I can click on the stroke and change that color. Oops, let's do that there. Change the color, change the weight to something, and you'll see that there, if I click on stroke, it's going to reveal the entire stroke panel. So I can change, I can make this a dashed line, you know, I can do all sorts of things like that. So, you know, that's the power that you have within the Appearances panel, is just to make some basic changes. But what you can also do is you can take this, the Appearances panel, and add a fill or add a stroke to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another stroke. Right? So now what I've done is I've added I clicked down here to add a stroke. I have a stroke that's now another 12-point dashed line. I'm going to change this so instead of dashed, it's going to be solid. And instead of the color, it's going to be like yellow. So now what I have is a double stroke where there's a yellow solid and there's a dotted line on top of that. I couldn't do that just with the one stroke, but I can do it now that I have two strokes. I can add another stroke. So let me add a third here, and this one's going to be below this. I'm going to make the weight of this one a little bit larger, make this 18. And then I'll change this to that magenta color again. So not only do I have the dots and a yellow fill, but I also have an outline around that. And that's because I have these three strokes that are applied to this path. 12-point dashed, 12-point yellow, and then 18 points underneath that. And the order that these are in, 1, 2, 3, is the order that these are going to be applied. So the dotted lines are on top of the yellow is on top of the 18-point magenta line. All right, I'm going to add one more. Let's say I want to make like a yellow line that goes through everything. So I'm going to add another stroke. I'm going to change this one to yellow. I'm not going to make it dotted anymore, and I'm going to change the weight to like 2. Let's make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. All right, so now there's my really interesting looking stroke that I've created for this path. All right, and it's just the order that it's in is the order that's going to be applied. Now I can move this order around. Oops, make sure that's selected. I can move this order around and it's going to kind of mess up the way that everything was applied. So let me just move this 12-point above there. And now I have this interesting style. Now, I can also do the same thing with the fills. I can take one fill and place it on top of another fill. So I'll make a new fill. I'm going to change this one to like the black and white gradient. So that's on top of this green. And now what I can also do in here is I can take this opacity, oops, I can take the opacity here and change it from normal, and I can change it to any of the blending modes. So now instead of it being white to black, it is now green to black. Pretty interesting. So that's like one of the major things that you can do with the appearances is you can load up multiple appearances onto one shape. But what you can also do, and I'm going to just move this over to the side so we can try this again. I'm going to just type D on my keyboard to clear out all the changes. Is that you can put effects on each of these as well. So I'm going to just take this stroke and make it like 12 points. And I'm going to change the fill color to something that we can see, like this kind of very bright yellow color, or yellowy green, acidy green color. All right, so now what I want to do is I want this stroke to be slightly offset, as if it was like a misregistered print. And so what I can do is with this stroke selected, you can see it's highlighted in blue. If I click on Effects, and I go to Distort, and I click on, let's do Transform, now what I can do is I can transform just this stroke separate from the fill. So I'm going to turn on my preview so you can see the changes. And I'm going to move the stroke over, let's say, 6 points, and I'm going to move the stroke up 6 points. Let's see if that did anything that's evident. Let's try 12 and 12. Now we can see what's happening. Now that stroke has been separated from the fill, and the fill is now, you can see this little gap of white between these areas here, as if it was like a misregistered print. Let's say I want to add another fill, and I want this second fill to be slightly misregistered as well. Let's make that yellow. I can put on the Effects, Distort and Transform, click on Transform, and again I'm going to do, let's do like -12 and -12, and now you should see that there's a yellow shape emerging from behind, and that's all part of this same path, right? One path controls everything. I can take my white arrow and distort this, and everything will update because it's all part of the same style. Let's undo that. All right, so this kind of gives us a basic understanding of how the Appearances panel works. You apply fills and strokes, multiple fills and strokes if you want, and then to those fills and strokes you can apply effects. There's a lot in here to mess with, and we'll take a look at two of them. We'll do the Transform, and we'll also do the Roughen one in our example. But again, tip of the iceberg, so much to take a look at. Let me delete all this stuff and type D on my keyboard. All right, so what we're going to do is some text effects using the Appearance panel. For the type that I'm using, I wanted something really big and thick and chunky, and I wanted to make sure that everyone had access to it. So I went to Adobe's Type Kit, and I found this typeface called Mighty Slab. And if you have an Adobe account, which I'm assuming you do because you have Adobe Illustrator, you can go there and activate the Mighty Slab font. If you want to use some other font, that's perfectly fine. All right, so what I'm going to do is take my Type tool, and let's open up my Character panel, Window, Type, and Character. Command or Control T will do that. I have Mighty Slab already selected. It comes in 4 styles. I think the 4 styles are so you can do some kind of 3D thing, but we're just going to stick with the style 1. And I'm setting this to a pretty big size, 144 points, and I'm going to just type out something. This is cool. All right, so this is the type that we're going to mess around with. For this first effect, we're just going to do like a little offset shadow effect on this. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on the Appearances panel, so I can see, so I can add some fills, and for this one it's just going to be fills. So let me move the Appearances panel over here, get the graphic styles out of the way. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do with the type selected is add a new fill. All right, so that didn't really change anything. I want to add 2 more fills, so 1, 2. The top fill I'm going to make red. The fill below it I'm going to make white. And the fill at the bottom I'm going to leave it as black, or whatever color that you have selected. Now I can't see any changes right now because what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add some effects to these fills. So I'm going to click on fill, the white fill, the second one down. I'm going to go to effects, distort, transform, and I'm going to make the horizontal offset 6 and the vertical offset 6 as well. Let's do the top one -6 and the bottom one 6. Now, just a little clarification here. In Illustrator world, a positive number for vertical will move you down. I don't know why, but that's just the way it is. A negative number for horizontal will move to the left, kind of as you would expect it. So I'm going to click on OK. Can't really see any change now because it's white against white. But now, if I go to the black fill and add the same effect, distort, transform, and transform, and this time the horizontal is -12 and the vertical is +12, now we get this cool double shadow. All right, so this is just done with 3 fills and with different amounts of transformation for the second and third fill down on the stack here. All right, so that's number 1. You did that? Awesome. All right, if not, rewind and rewatch it again. It's very straightforward. All right, for this next type treatment, what we're going to do is treat the fill and the stroke differently. So I'm going to type out something similar that I did before. This is cool, exclamation point. All right, with the type selected, what I'd like you to do is change the fill color here to none. And the reason for doing this is that base fill color will show up later on when we do some effects. So to prevent that black from appearing in places that we don't want it to be, we're making this none for now. All right, with this text path selected, and you can see there's a blue line here, we're going to go over to the Appearances panel and click on Add New Fill. And now that's added a fill to this, and this is a great place for us to start. I'm going to change the fill color to this like acidy yellow-green again, and I'm going to change the stroke to black, and I'm going to change the weight to about 3 points. All right, so this is some basic conditions that any shape or text could have in Illustrator, where it has a fill and a stroke color and a stroke of a certain weight. The difference with the Appearance panel is that I can have multiple strokes and multiple fills, and I can apply effects to fills and strokes. Now with this selected, and that's important, make sure it has the blue line underneath it to register that it's selected. We're going to click on the stroke panel, the stroke option here in the Appearances, and add a transform effect. So click on stroke, click on the effects icon, go to distort and transform, and click on transform. And what we're going to do in here is we're going to make the stroke appear slightly offset, as if it was like misregistered when it printed. So I'm going to move it to the right 4 points. I want to move it vertically up 4 points, and again, if I type a negative number in there, it's going to move that up. I'm also going to change the angle. Just want that to be slightly off, so I'm going to put in 0.25, and that will change the angle. If I click on preview, now I get a little idea of what that's going to look like. If you want it to be even more subtle, you could probably put in 0.125. Regardless, just want you to pay attention to this down here. This is your reference point. So my rotation and my move, and if I was changing the scale, would all happen relative to the center of my selection, as opposed to one of the corners. And I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. All right, so now I have the transform effect applied to this text. I want to point out that you can turn on or off that transformation just by clicking this little eyeball icon next to where it says transform. Now on the fill, I'm going to add another effect. It's also under Distort and Transform. And this one, I'm going to use the roughen effect. And let's turn the preview on so you can see some of the craziness that happens with this. So roughen takes that path and begins roughening it up. I can add a lot of detail to it. I can change the size of it if I want. That certainly looks pretty wild. But I want to be a little bit more subtle with this. So I'm going to change my detail down to 0. I'm going to change my size down to about 4%. And instead of it being angular, I want the points to be smooth. So now what I have is I have a fill that's been applied to this. That's that acid green color. And just the fill has been given that distort effect on it, or the roughen effect on it, to make it look all blobby. Now the cool thing about this, and the same with the one above, is that this is text, right? So if I highlight this and just type something else, are amazing, you're getting the same effect throughout. I think I spelled appearances right. So that's a pretty amazing thing that you can do with the appearances panel. Now one more thing that I want to show you. If you go to the window menu and you click on graphic styles, this is a way for you to save appearances. So if I select this appearances are amazing text, right, make that highlighted, at the bottom of my graphics panel, graphic style panel, I can click on new graphic style. And now what happens is I was able to save that style to this panel. So that means that if I draw something, let's just draw some arbitrary shape using the pen tool, now I can apply that graphic style to it. Same thing goes for this one that I made before. If I click on it and highlight it and I add a new graphic style, I can save that and I can just apply it to that one. So there is a lot that you can do with the appearances style. This is really just the tip of the iceberg. I would recommend just keep playing around with it and see what you can come up with. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next tutorial. Peace.